G'day guys, welcome to the Boundary Riders podcast, episode 122, and of course we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to be discussing the sad retirement of a Carlton great, some interesting information regarding the West Coast Eagles potentially looking at a priority pick, the Flog of the Week of course, and of course the preview to the new round along with the review to AFL Fantasy, so much more. So let's roll the intro guys and get straight into it. Welcome to the Boundary Riders podcast, your one-stop shop for all your AFL content needs.
He looks at his options and Jack Ginnivan says, boys, you brought me to the club to do justice!
But this guy has Flog written all over him.
From a tack down, Reed sprints away from Petrarca, leaves him in his wake, takes a second bounce, takes a third. The sheer arrogance of Harley Reid. Finish the job, young man!
So let's get into the footy news from the week that was. So guys, of course, at this stage, I am going to keep you updated on Stephen May's tribunal call. I am recording this a little bit late this week. If it is revealed in the next couple of 45 minutes to an hour, I will tell you guys on the podcast and discuss what I think about the decision. Overall, I think he probably will get weeks, but it's pretty tough for me. I don't think he even meant to hit Francis Evans. It's just an unfortunate incident that he collected his nose or face with his shoulder. So I understand why he's going to get weeks for this, but it is very tough. I don't really know what Stephen May was supposed to do in that situation. I think he's probably going to get 3 weeks, I would say. I don't think he'll get any more than that because I don't think it was forceful enough to warrant a 4 or 5 week suspension, but still very tough on Stephen May. And I think we are asking a lot of the AFL players nowadays because overall I don't think there's anything else he could have done. He went for the footy. Francis Evans just got there first, and unfortunately he got beaten to the footy, and when he braced for impact, he collected Francis Evans. So we'll have to wait and see. I'll let you guys know what I think if it comes out in the next hour or so. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think it's pretty tough, but I understand why they're going to give him weeks. I would be extremely surprised if he gets off. But let's move into some other topics over the weekend. On some injury front, it does seem that Cam Zurhaar may be out against the Cats this week. He has copped a knock in the cheek and will require a medical assessment throughout the week, with some concern about his availability for Saturday afternoon for the Roos. Collingwood is considering playing Jordan De Goey in the VFL this week on limited minutes. So they will be looking at tomorrow. They should be having a little bit more of a look into his Achilles tendon to see if he will be okay to return through the VFL or on limited minutes. We'll just have to wait and see. On the Gold Coast, sad news here for Dan Rioli, of course, was ruled out of the game against the Crows last week. He'll be out for 4 to 6 weeks with a small fracture in his fibula. So that's really tough there for the Gold Coast. At this stage, they sit in a pretty precarious position right now. You would assume that they would make finals, but they're sitting in a weird spot right now. They have a pretty decent run home, so I think they'll be fine. But Dan Rioli being out is going to be tough. He's been such a good player for them this year. And the sad news, of course, of Sam Doherty making the announcement to Carlton players and the team today that the game on Thursday night will be his final game of AFL football. He is going to retire after the game on Thursday night. So sad news for Sam Doherty, such a warrior. Of course, went through cancer, I think it was twice during his AFL career, and he's going to be hanging up the boots. I think it's probably time for him, and what a super player. What an inspiration, really. Pretty sad that he never really got the ultimate success at Carlton. Obviously started his career way back, would have been, 2011, 2012 when he was at the Brisbane Lions, and then moved to the Blues, was their captain for quite a few years. Really sad news, but overall, a great player. Deserves a lot of praise for what he's done at Carlton and overall as a footballer and what he's had to go through to come back multiple times through injury and, cancer and stuff like that. It's amazing what he's gone through and what he's been able to achieve throughout his career. So great to see him retiring, in a pretty decent bill of health from what I can understand, and hopefully his next stage in life is all well and good as well. And some good news on Marcus Bontempelli. He is finally signed with the Western Bulldogs. He signed a 4-year deal to remain at the Dogs until 2029. Now, I did like the social media post that the Bulldogs put out today regarding him and Collingwood. It does seem that maybe he rejected upwards of nearly $2 million to join another football club, but he decided to stay loyal to the Dogs, which I'm not exactly surprised about. I think that he was obviously going to sign. It was a bit surprising that it took him so long. Usually we don't see AFL players, especially to get to this point of the season and, re-sign or take so long, especially like club greats. You would have expected he would have signed a lot earlier in the year. But in the end, they've got the job done. He will be there till 2029. I'm not exactly know the knowledge of how old Marcus Bontempelli is, but I feel like now it's one club player for life at this stage. There was some conjecture, I did say it in the trade video, about him potentially maybe wanting to take a shorter term deal to see if an offer from Tasmania comes in. That seems like he's kind of stepped away from that, deciding to stay with the Bulldogs long term, which I think was always going to be the decision that he was going to lean towards. So great news for the Western Bulldogs. Hopefully they can now put that little bit of unrest to rest and move into the rest of their year and hopefully make a pretty good run at finals. At this stage, it's a little bit concerning. I think they'll be fine on finals as well, but we'll just have to wait and see on that front. But now let's move into the West Coast Eagles. Now, we did talk about this in an episode of the podcast, I think it would have been about 2 months ago now, regarding the West Coast Eagles and wanting or needing a priority pick. And it does seem, according to Tom Morris, so take it with a bit of a grain of salt, but he says that they are highly likely to ask the AFL for a priority pick at this year's draft. They will obviously have the number one pick. They will have a pretty high pick as well for compensation from Oscar Allen. And it also seems they're going to be asking for a priority pick, which you would assume would be up there in the top 5 picks. So they could have 3 top picks in the top 5, the West Coast Eagles. Now, do I think they deserve a priority pick? No, I don't think they do. I don't think they should get one because, 7 years ago now, they won the premiership. 5 years ago, they made a final. I think they made it in 2020, I'm pretty sure. So it's not like they're in North Melbourne's situation or the Gold Coast. They don't need a priority pick. They need to pick players up. They need to stop. Think about this. But also another thing with the West Coast Eagles as well is the fact that they haven't had problems attracting players either. Like you think of a North Melbourne or a Gold Coast, for so many years, those clubs were losing players en masse and not bringing anyone in of experience. So that I understand to an extent why they were getting priority picks. But the fact that the West Coast Eagles are asking for it when they have really no players en masse leaving. And in fact, they're pretty good at bringing players in. We've seen in more recent years, Baker come through, Graham, Brockman. There's obviously a couple more as well. Now, they have lost a few, but overall, the fact that they can still hold their list relatively intact, I think, without losing too many players, I don't think they need a priority pick, and I don't think they deserve one. I don't think they've been down the bottom for so long that they need to get help from the AFL. They're also one of the most richest clubs in the country, and they're also one of the most popular clubs in the country. They have they still have a higher membership number than Fremantle and all of the interstate clubs, other than maybe Port Adelaide and the Crows. But even then, I think they have the highest membership numbers in terms of interstate clubs. So by no means do I think they need a priority pick whatsoever. And then you look at things like the stories regarding Harley Reid in more recent times about his contract talks. So I don't think they deserve one at all. I think that they are more than fine with where they are. They need to focus more on the draft. I agree with that. Maybe they do need to get rid of a couple of experienced players who are kind of towards the end of their careers and maybe move a couple of them that are not going to be there for the next premiership. Maybe, I don't know why they signed Tim Kelly. That was a waste of years and money. They should have just if he wanted to go, let him go. If he wanted to retire, let him retire. At this point, there is no need to have kept him on the list. You've got a couple of young guys that can come through. There's also a couple of others that I would probably say, why are you still there? Jack Petrocelli would probably be one of them. Tom Cole is probably in and out, you would say. There's probably more than enough. I don't really know a lot of the West Coast lists, to be honest, but there are a few out there that don't deserve to be getting games, for one, but also don't deserve to be getting paid a decent enough salary that they are, taking. They need to get a priority pick in as well. I think that they've got a pretty good line of a team. I think they've got 2 really good forwards coming through. Jake Waterman, of course, 50-plus goal year in 2024. Oscar Allen's on the out. I think that's a good move in the end. Just let him go. Get the compensation pick. You'll get probably pick 2 or 3 because of how high his salary is going to be at the Brisbane Lions. And Job Shanahan, for mine, is the guy you build off of. I think that guy has shown some great signs in his early few games for the West Coast Eagles. He seems like he can lead the line, so I love that. Down back, Harry Edwards looks like the new key back. I know McGovern's a bad loss. Obviously, I think he probably could have gone into the next year or two as the captain until they reinvigorate something different. But unfortunately, with his concussion, he's had to retire, which is totally fair. But Harry Edwards is the guy you build in that defense. Sandy Brock has shown some pretty decent signs in the back 50 as well as a tall. And then through the midfield, I like Harley Reid as a midfielder. Has had some pretty good games over the last couple of weeks. He still needs to build up his tank a bit because he can't run out games as well as some others. So, but I mean, if he can get 27 disposals in a game, if he can get up to 30, he's going to rip games apart. And if he can do it on a consistent basis, he's going to be top 5 player in the competition in the next couple of years. So as soon as he can build that tank, he's going to be up there, obviously. And I mean, it does seem a little bit arrogant of him. I would understand why people would think that's a bit arrogant of him asking for so much money and, a long-term deal now, because he's only been in the system for just over a year and a bit. But the potential's there. We've seen what he can do. I think that he should. I mean, I don't really mind the idea of him doing that. His AFL is a short career in the scheme of things, so you might as, if you've got the potential, people are going to pay for it. You might as well go out there and ask for what you think you're worth. I think that's more than fair. So, yeah, I think that they've got the building blocks of a team, the West Coast. There's probably a lot of role players that they do need, but overall, I think they've got the lineup to build up, and I don't think they need help from the AFL to do so. They just need to hit a couple of drafts get a couple of players in through the draft. I mean, they're going to get 2 top picks this season. That's good enough. You don't need a third. And they've never had a problem recruiting players from other clubs. So, the fact that the Fremantle Dockers are been higher than them for the last, 4 years or so, and they are still recruiting some big players like Baker and Graham over Fremantle shows to me that they have no issue recruiting players. So West Coast, I don't think they don't need a priority pick. Absolutely not, in my opinion. And 2, I think they'll be fine in the next couple of years. They're still going to be on the end of some smashings, but I personally think that McWalter's got them going in the right direction. And yes, it was a terrible loss to Richmond last week. I don't think you can argue that, but I think overall, I think they're walking in the right direction. I think they're kind of moving in the right way. But I did also want to bring up what James Hird had to say about this, because he was asked on the Footy Furnace on Channel 9 regarding if the West Coast Eagles deserve a priority pick.
At the other end of the ladder, they're 1-18. They're having a miserable season. Poor Andrew McWalter. The West Coast Eagles fans keep turning up. They've had a shocking few years as well. Ever since really 2022, their record is poor. They're 11-76 from their past 87 games. And the question will be asked now, probably by the Eagles to the AFL: do we deserve a priority pick at the end of the season? What would you say for the AFL, Hurdy?
Absolutely no chance. They're the most powerful, richest team in the competition. They've got themselves in that position. There's no way they've got to get themselves out of it.
Devil's advocate, doesn't every team who gets a priority pick get themselves in that position?
Yeah, but the other teams don't have the resources that West Coast have. I mean, you look at, Jimmy, how rich are West Coast?
They could probably buy their next licence, couldn't they?
Do they deserve a priority pick?
No.
Well, I agree with you as well. But they will. I think they are highly likely to ask the question.
So I totally agree with that sentiment. They're one of the most powerful clubs in the AFL, one of the richest. There is no need to ask for a priority pick. I mean, they will. They've got to ask because of where they are, and they're still sitting down the bottom. But literally, in 2021, they won 10 games. They finished 9th on the ladder, I think it was. So they weren't exactly in a terrible position. They made finals in 2020. So they're not that far away. Look at North Melbourne. What was it, 2018, I think, since the last time they made it, and they were down the bottom for so many years battling. And yeah, overall, I think West Coast will be. I think they'll be fine long term. I think they'll be okay. They've put themselves in the situation though, and they need to just realise that they need to fix this list, because there are a lot of issues. But I do think overall they have the bare bones of a list that can build in the next couple of seasons. Maybe 4 or 5 years, I think they'll be right. I think they'll be around the mark back into that finals contention. But right now, though, they're not looking the greatest, let's be real. No priority pick, I'm sorry. Now, let's move on and talk about North Melbourne, because They're sitting in seventh. They're sitting below Richmond right now. This team, who were, by the way, not expected to win a game this season, they're sitting with a percentage that is the fourth worst in the competition. They have got just a better percentage than Essendon, who has lost a third of their list through injury this year, and are playing. They've got about, I think, 10 or 11 players that have played less than 10 games in their team regularly now. Where is this club at? Because they're sitting in 17th position. I can't see them finishing any higher than 16th right now. They don't have their first round pick because they traded it away to Richmond, who are sitting pretty at the moment. They are doing better than North Melbourne, and they're going to get pick, 2 and 3 in the draft. Probably moves down one because of Oscar Allen and compensation, but they're still going to get, Richmond are going to get 2 picks in the top 5, while North Melbourne are going to get none of it. They're not going to get any of it. So they're going to have to try and fight to potentially try and get themselves up in the draft, but what a debacle of a trade that was. Who they pick up? They picked up one of the Whitlock brothers. Could be a star. Who knows? But they also could be picking up a star in the draft, but they're not. They won't have the chance to do that because they traded it away. Stupid decision. And now they're sitting in a position where they're not going to finish any higher than what they did in the last few seasons. They have 4 wins, 1 draw from their 18 games so far this season, and it's not looking pretty for the rest of the year. They continue to get beaten in games. Nick Larkey looks like he may be out. I mean, look, he may come back, but he's been suffering with an issue with his PCL. I mean, do you really want to risk that for the rest of the season? Like, you really don't have much else to play for. I mean, what can they do from here? Maybe win a game or 2, maybe finish in 16th or 15th. Is that really worth risking one of the best key forwards in the game? I don't tend to think so. So I just don't know where they go from here. They've picked up all these players, these experienced players, to help them build with these young kids. They have shown some signs throughout the year where we've been thinking, okay, this team is about to come along. We're about to finally see a North Melbourne side that we want to see every week. We saw it earlier in the year against Melbourne, and then I think it was a couple of weeks later, or even a week later they played at Sydney, got smashed, and we were like, North Melbourne's crap again. We saw them, battle in games throughout middle part of the year. We saw them get a draw against Brisbane, the premiers, and then they beat Carlton. And, even though it was only by 14 points, they had that game won at 3/4 time. And we were like, finally, North Melbourne are back. And then they get smashed a week later by Hawthorn. It's starting to get really frustrating. North Melbourne are just continually just cock-teasing all of us. Like, yes, we are about to show you guys how good we are, but not yet, not yet, not yet. How long do we have to wait until we get to see a North Melbourne team that is competitive? Because we see this sort of thing every single year from the Kangas. They play a couple of good games throughout the year, and we're like, okay, we've finally seen some signs here that this team is going to improve, that this team is going to be around, pushing towards that 10th spot, pushing around the 8. We want to see that sort of performance. They have a pretty strong list, of a team. They have some problems, like every team does. I think their defense probably is a bit lackluster. Griffin Logue, Aiden Core, their experienced key defenders. I think they need someone who's a bit better. Charlie Comben has shown good signs this year, but he needs help, and I think that's a pretty fair statement. Up forward, they have some good magnets up there. They have the likes of Curtis, Zerha, Larkey, but then it kind of falls off, doesn't it? And then Zerha is very inconsistent. Curtis had a really good start to the year, but since then he's kind of dropped off since that suspension. And then Larkey, he's so heavily relied on, and he doesn't have much help. Jack Darling, waste of a trade. Don't know why they did that. Just didn't work. Hasn't really worked at all. Let's be real. They've got a couple of other kids that they've played through the forward line. Like, where's Eddie Ford? He looked like he was going to come along. He isn't getting games. They're giving games to players like Robert Hanson Jr., who's shown a couple of signs, but overall not much. Cooper Harvey's came in the last few weeks and done okay, but is he going to be a star? Is he going to be that small forward that they need? Who knows? Maybe. Their midfield is so stacked, and yet it gets beaten up every 2 or 3 weeks. And if their midfield doesn't absolutely star, they're not in contest at all. Davies Uniacke, I still think he's probably a B plus grader at best. He's still not that A grader. We've seen his A grade best at times, but not consistently. Harry Sheasel, they've been chucking him back. They've put him as centre forward. He's not really using the ball that well. I love how Kane Corns has gone silent on him now, but his score involvements haven't really increased, which was something he was so adamantly, so angry about. They've chucked McKercher at halfback. He's butchering the football. Caleb Daniel really isn't doing much, I would say. I love the inclusion of Luke Parker. What a season he has had for the Roos in his first season. He has shown why he was recruited to the club. Jai Simpkins been up and down. Tristan Cherry has been brilliant, let's be honest. But there's so many stragglers in this club right now. They've got players like Will Phillips getting games. What a shit show that was in that draft period. They missed on Logan McDonald, and then 2 years later they missed on Aaron Cadman. They picked up Wardlaw and Sheezer, which was good. But again, Wardlaw's been injury prone since then. There's just so many question marks about the Kangaroos. And when are they going to finally come to the AFL and say, prove to the competition that they are a club to watch? Because right now, the only team they're sitting above is the West Coast Eagles, who have got one win and are on track, the West Coast, to have one of the worst seasons in AFL history, by the way. We've only seen a few teams in AFL history get one win in a campaign. We saw the Giants in 2013, which was their second year in the AFL. And we've seen, I think it was Sydney Swans back in the early 90s and Fitzroy in their last season in the AFL. That's how bad a season West Coast are having. And North Melbourne are just above them. I am sick and tired of looking at North Melbourne every week on the fixture and thinking, oh, what another crap game to watch. But then they tease us all the time. They're like, oh, great, we're going to be good. We're showing some signs. We're really improving. We're doing this and that. But they just don't do it consistently. And we're sitting here now, round 2025, and they continue to just tease us and act like this team is going to be something in the next few years. Like, what is their run home? I'd like to actually see it just quickly, because they've got the Cats this week. That's at Marvel. They lose that. St Kilda have a bit of a chance. Who knows? GWS, they get killed. Richmond down in Tasmania. They haven't done well in Tasmania in more recent times, so I'd honestly be looking at Richmond in that game. And then their last game against the Crows. I mean, that one's got the hallmarks of 150-point thumping. So maybe they get one win. They could knock off St Kilda. They could. But overall, they're not finishing higher than 15th. There's going to be another bottom four finish. They may get 6 wins. They surely should be getting more than that nowadays. I know I've ranted about North Melbourne for a bit now, but they just continue to frustrate me. And I'm not even a North Melbourne fan. Like last week against the Swans, I thought they could have put up a bit of a fight, but they did for a bit. But overall, I mean, they were there for 3 quarters. But overall, I think the Swans didn't really put them away. And in that final term, how do you not have someone on Isaac Heaney to kick 5 goals? Like, Isaac Heaney's an amazing player, right? But surely, at stoppage, we saw how good Brodie Grundy was last week against the Saints 2 weeks ago. Won them the game off his own hand. And then they got, 2 goals, I think, easily from the stoppage. Like, how was that not coached at the start of the round, saying, hey, Grundy is tapping to the outside of the stoppage to try and get his midfielders on the fly. And what happens? They get done straight at it. And that's their one-wood, North Melbourne, is their stoppage work and their midfield play. And they just got done by Sydney in the last term. Yeah, it's just getting continually frustrating. The West Coast Eagles, I talked about a moment ago, they're going to ask for a priority pick. I don't think they deserve it. North Melbourne, look at all the priority picks and concessions the AFL have tried to give them to try and get this club back to relevancy, and they continue to just crap all over it. Just gets frustrating year on year. But who knows? Maybe they can bring in some players in the off-season, and maybe they can tease us again. But I'm not gonna fall. I'm not gonna fall for it. I want to say I don't want to fall for it. I've fallen for it for a couple of years now, but I don't know if I can do it anymore. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. It just continues to frustrate me, the Kangas. But let's move on from that. So now, guys, of course, let's get to the preview to the new round. Of course, round 20. A couple of big games coming up. Of course, it's pretty much rivalry round, if I'm being honest. We've got the Sydney Derby. We've got the Q Clash. We've got the WA Derby, the original, the And of course, we've got the showdown and then a couple of big Victorian matchups as well. We've got Hawthorn against Carlton, of course, last game for Sam Doherty. Richmond up against Collingwood, which I know on paper doesn't look like much, but two very big Victorian clubs. So let's not waste any of your time. Let's get into the preview to round 20. We've got about 9 teams, of course, vying for final spots. The Swans are pretty close. And speaking of the Sydney Swans, of course, we start with the first matchup we're going to be taking a look at today. The Giants up against the Sydney Swans. The Sydney Smash, the Battle of the Bridge, the Sydney Derby, whatever you want to call it. This is going to be one of the biggest battles that we have seen in some time. Both teams are coming into this game in red-hot form. GWS have won their last 5 games, while Sydney have won 5 of their last 6. And of course, Sydney have had the wood over the Giants in more recent times, with Sydney winning their last 5 encounters. Now, of course, both of these teams still have to keep on winning, as the Giants have a lot of teams behind them vying for spots in the top 8, while the Swans are one of those teams who are going to have to fight to get one of those spots in the 8 at the end of the season. Because if they lose the Swans from here, they are out of finals contention. I mean, it would be awfully fitting if the little brother was able to knock them off and knock them out of finals. But let's take a look at a couple of things that we need to take a look at for this game. First of all, on the injury front, GWS could see the return of Sam Taylor this week after being out with a toe for some time. And we should also see the return of Josh Kelly and Jesse Hogan. While Sydney may get back Tom McCartan and Tom Papley, however, I think they'll take a lot more of a cautious approach with them too, so we'll have to wait and see throughout the week if those two return. Now, the last time these two teams met, Sydney made a unique decision to have their key forwards antagonise the key defenders at GWS in Taylor and Buckley, and it worked to pretty good effect. Now, in that occasion, it was Hamling and Francis who did the job, and I don't think the Swans will need to go down that route again. Hamling's been needed down in defence, and Francis really isn't that good of forms. So I think we need to go with a bit of a different route for the Swans, and I think it's time for a bit of a different approach, and I'm going to call it Project Buller the Bully. I think this guy should be set the task to get under the skin of the Giants defenders, and I also think Hayden McLean needs to do the same. Not many teams have really used this tactic so far this season, other than the Swans, and it worked to good effect last time, so I think they might as well try it again and see what happens. I mean, the Swans really have nothing to lose here. So if there's a tactic they used last time and it worked, I think they should do it again. Now, a few matchups to keep an eye on down the Giants end. I think that Sam Wicks, what a season he's been having down back. He likely goes to Bedford or Jones. Rampy goes to Toby Green, who's had a really good matchup on him in recent times. Hamling probably gets the job on Jesse Hogan if McCartan is out, because I think that Melican has to go to Jake Stringer. Hamling won't be able to keep up with him at forward stoppage, and then if he pushes up the ground, I can't see a way where Hamling's going to be able to keep him covered. So Melican, I think, will get the job on him, which then leaves Aaron Cadman. Really hard to pick a matchup for this one, but it probably has to go to Nick Blakey, if I'm being honest. So if McCartan is in the lineup for the Swans, it will help a whole lot. But if he is out, the Swans are going to have to get a little bit creative on their matchups. Now, I think James Jordan will probably go to Lockie Whitfield, as he did earlier in the year, and kept him pretty well held. However, in the last couple of weeks, I've been a pretty big supporter of Finn Callaghan, and since his return from his mid-season injury, the Giants haven't lost a game. So I wouldn't be too surprised if James Jordan tries to match up on Callaghan at some point throughout this game, especially if he does get off the chain, but it's going to be a tough matchup. So now let's get to the tip, and I'm going to be going with the Sydney Swans. I think it's going to be one of the all-time games. I think it's going to be one of the games of the round, and I think it's going to be going right down to the wire. However, the reason why I'm going to be picking Sydney is they have had the wood over the Giants in more recent times, and with the Swans having Grundy, Heaney, and Goulden in red-hot form, I can't see a way where the Giants can stop all the Swans' weapons. But in saying that, the Giants' forward line is going to be really hard to stop, so I think it sets up for one of the biggest Sydney derbies in more recent times. I can't wait to see this one. Now, my brother has picked the Giants. He said that even though the Swans have good record over GWS, he's going with the Giants for the fact that Hogan should be back, Cadman is in best form, and he doesn't trust the Swans' forward line to kick a winning score. Another rivalry, of course, it is the Q Clash with the Gold Coast up against the Lions. Now, earlier in this season, it was built up as the biggest Q Clash in the Suns' history, and they failed that test. Now we get to the pointy end of the season, and the Suns need to win here against the Lions. And again, it's a history-defining Q Clash for the Gold Coast Suns once again. Now, Zach Bailey is a massive in for the Lions after missing last week through suspension, while the Suns can hopefully get back Sam Collins, who has missed the last few games, but Miller will be out, which is massive, so they do need that experience of Sam Collins back. Now, last week, the Suns were absolutely smashed by the Crows, while the Lions continued on their red-hot form against the Dogs. The Gold Coast form, on paper, does look pretty good before before last week. They beat the Pies, and before that, they had wins over Essendon and Melbourne. However, something that would be a worrying trend for the Gold Coast is the fact that they aren't playing 4 quarters. Against the Pies, they nearly got overrun in the final term. Against the Bombers, they were neck and neck for 3 quarters. And going back even further, they had a chance to win against the Giants about a month ago now, but they didn't have the potency to put them away, and eventually they were overran. So if they're going to be able to be seen as a finals contender this year, the Gold Coast, they're going to have to heed the words of their coach from last year and simply grow up. You can't be a team that's taken seriously in my eyes if you continue to have these lapses in games. And against a team like the Brisbane Lions, they're not going to be given that luxury. So if the Gold Coast are going to be able to win this game, they simply have to stop the methodical ball movement of Brisbane, and they need to put pressure on the ball carrier. So I do expect a response from the Gold Coast after that insipid performance in the first half against Crows. However, I'm going to be picking Brisbane. As for one, last week really turned me off the Gold Coast. I wasn't expecting them to beat the Crows, but I was expecting at least some sort of fight. And that first half from the Gold Coast was almost a blast from the past, if I'm being honest, and not in a good way. But that's not the only reason why I'm picking the Lions here. I know they missed a couple of opportunities last week against the Bulldogs to put that game away a little bit earlier, but I think the Lions are one of the teams to beat this year. They are so balanced all over the ground. All 23 players every week play their role, and they continue to be the team, in my opinion, who can contend with the Pies this year. Now, my brother is also picking the Lions. He has said they've won 10 of the last 11 matches between the sides. He lost a lot of trust with the Gold Coast last week after their performance against the Crows, and Zach Bailey being back against the Suns is going to be tough. He also can't see the Gold Coast being able to handle McCluggage, Ashcroft, and Neal, especially if they all get off the chain. But now let's get to the next rivalry, the biggest one in football, in my opinion, especially interstate football, is the Crows up against the Power. It is the showdown. Only one team is still in finals contention. There's always something a little bit more on the line when it comes to a showdown when these two match up. The Crows right now are probably the biggest informed team in the competition, while the Power had their season ended last week against the Hawks. Now, Port Adelaide's form has been a bit up and down in more recent weeks. They've won 2 of their last 5, but those wins came against Carlton and West Coast. And it wasn't exactly a convincing performance against the Eagles a few weeks ago, as they really only were able to get away in that final term by kicking away. So let's take a look at a few matchups that I want to take a little bit more of a deep dive into. I think that Bergman will go to Dawson. He did do that in the last showdown. I think he's going to go and tag him. Now, I know Bergman hasn't been doing these lockdown jobs in recent weeks, but I think he simply has to stop the Crows captain. Now, with Radicalier out for the rest of the season, Port Adelaide are probably going to be pretty stretched down back, so it likely means that Lachie Jones will have to play tall. So I think he probably goes to Taylor Walker, and then you can probably take your pick on Aaliyah and Zerk Thatcher if he goes to Fogarty or Thilthorpe. But something that everyone has to keep in mind for this matchup is the weather. It's early doors, but it is expected it's going to be cold and rainy throughout the Saturday afternoon into the evening in Adelaide. There's a 95% chance of rain on that day, and the maximum temperature is going to be 12 degrees. So I think with all the tools in the Crows forward line, I think they could struggle in these conditions, which does help the Power defense quite a lot. So to my tip, it's the final Ken Hinkley showdown. It's a Crows home game, a hostile environment where all the odds are against the Power. It just has that sort of feeling that the Power are going to get up for Ken. We have seen so many times before that the Port Adelaide boys just get up for Ken Hinkley when they need him most. And I think they're going to get up one last time for him. Not only do I think the Crows are kind of due for a loss, and I know it's a bit of a roughy pick, but I'm going to be picking the Power. I think they can get it done for their man. Now, my brother is also picking the Power. He's picking his side. He said he's going to back them in. Kenny's last showdown, what a way to go out. Then to beat the Adelaide Crows and mess up their top 4 credentials. And he thinks that Kenny's going to get up for one last hurrah. So I think that too. It's going to be a massive game. What a showdown to really end Ken Hinkley's career. It seems fitting that he would get him up for one more game. So why not just throw a spanner in the works and try and ruin the Crows' top 4 credentials? I think they'll make it anyway if they do lose, but it seems like sort of a Ken Hinkley type performance to come into this one. But the final game I want to take a look at is Richmond up against Collingwood. Now, look, it's simple that I'm going to be picking Collingwood here. That's a pretty obvious fact. But I want to first give some praise to the Tigers for what they've done this year. The fact that so many people, including myself, didn't really expect them to win many games at all. And for the fact now that they have 5 wins this season, 2 on the trot, is just extraordinary. So I have to say well done to the Tigers. And I also want to just take a look at a margin for this matchup, because a lot of people would be expecting that the Pies are simply just going to absolutely thump the Tigers. And yes, I mean, it very well could go that way. However, I think this game could be a lot closer than people expect. Collingwood don't tend to thump teams throughout this season, as they only won 4 games throughout the year by only 50 points, and none of those games have come against bottom 4 teams. So I do think Collingwood are probably going to rest some players for this match, as they've done for the last few weeks. And of course, like I said, I'm going to be tipping the Pies, but I think the margin margin is something you need to be cautious of if you're going to be picking the margin for this game, just to be a little bit cautious, because if the Tigers bring the sort of pressure that they did against the Eagles last week, I think that Richmond could definitely stay with Collingwood for a lot of the afternoon. But again, reiterating, I'm picking Collingwood. My brother, again, has also picked the Pies. He said that they may be resting a few players, but they'll just be simply a class above, which I tend to agree with. But for now, guys, let's get to our full tips for round 20. So my tips for round 20 are Hawthorn to beat Carlton, the Dogs to beat Essendon, Sydney to beat GWS, Brisbane to beat the Gold Coast, Fremantle to beat the West Coast Eagles, Geelong to beat North Melbourne, Port Adelaide to beat the Crows, Collingwood to beat Richmond, and St Kilda to beat Melbourne. And my brother's full tips for round 20 are Hawthorn to beat Carlton, the Dogs to beat Essendon, GWS to beat the Swans, Brisbane to beat the Gold Coast, Fremantle to beat West Coast, Geelong to beat North Melbourne, Port Adelaide to beat the Crows, Collingwood to beat the Tigers, and St Kilda to beat Melbourne. But with that being said, guys, let's now get to our certainty tips for this week. I have got the first pick this one. I have picked the Pies to beat the Tigers, of course, Collingwood losing to the Dockers last week. And my brother is going with the Western Bulldogs to beat Essendon, of course, the Dogs losing to the Lions last week. But now, guys, of course, finally, let's take a look at the AFL tipping ladder for the channel. And Leviticus got one tip on me and Braxton, us three, still sitting in the top 3 spots with the boy from SNB sitting in 4th. But Leviticus got another tip. He's jumped another spot in front of us. He is 5 tips in front of me and Braxton now, so it's going to be super, super tough for us to claw back those tips right now. I want to bring up, though, Banjo Vic, because he got 8 tips over the week, which is pretty tough. He tipped the West Coast Eagles against the Tigers, so I am never tipping them ever again, the West Coast, by the way. Absolutely deplorable performance, and that's the only thing that ruined his perfect round, because he picked Fremantle. So well done to Banjo for picking that tip. That would have been, most of Australia wouldn't have agreed with you, but good on you for picking that one. Kept his spot alive. He's 10 tips behind, so he's pretty far away. But, you know, if you pick those sort of roughies, you can make those sort of charges. So that's why I've made a couple of roughy picks this week. I've got to try and claw back from Leviticus because he continues to just pull away. 5 tips now. I've got to make the big move. I'd rather lose the tipping comp by 10 and give it a go than just sit around where I am now, sit on my morals and lose by 5 or 4. But guys, that's pretty much all we have for the preview to the new round. Up next, of course, we get to my brother's betting segment for this episode. Again, he is away. But, I mean, I don't even know when he's going to be back. But don't worry, he hasn't died. He's not away. He's not. We haven't had like a big split behind the scenes. Don't worry. It's okay. There's no drama here. We're not drama farming. Maybe I should start doing that, eh? Start making a drama about my twin brother. That'd be something epic. We'll discuss that. You guys who watch the podcast will know. But we'll do it on like the main channel and no one else is going to realize we're going to be like having a mad beef. That'd be sick. Anyway, let's get into my brother's betting segment for the week for round 20.
Okay guys, let's get into round 20 of the AFL. We're back at the MCG for Thursday Night Football. Hawthorn v Carlton. First leg is Paddy Cripps for 20 plus disposals. Second leg is James Sicily for 20 plus disposals. Third leg is Josh Ward for 20 plus disposals. And the final leg is Massimo D'Ambrosio for 15 plus disposals, valued at $5. My certainty bet this week is Ed Richards for 25 plus disposals against the Bombers on Friday night, valued at $1.50. Finally, the outside the boundary bet this week, I'm taking Jordan Clark for 30 plus disposals against the Eagles in the Derby on Saturday afternoon, valued at $4.25. And as always, guys, gamble responsibly.
AFL Fantasy, of course. Let's quickly get into that in a moment. Probably a pretty decent week from me, I would say. I beat my brother's score, which is what I am planning to do, try and beat him out. But I don't know, it's going to be tough. We've seen a couple of really big fighters at the top of the ladder as well. Timber, I think his name is, the Cheetah Cubs, I'm pretty sure, just continues to hold that top spot. One of the top AFL fantasy teams in the country right now. I think there's 86 of us in the league, and he just continues to hold the top spot. He's been up there for nearly a month now, so going to be hard to knock him off, but let's get into the rest of the review for round 19. And overall, I thought it was an okay week for me. Overall, I scored 2,196, which brings my rank to 14,224. So, look, not the greatest, but I'm going to take it. Now, the round rank was 12,023, so that's pretty decent, better than my overall rank. Now, a couple of really good players over the weekend. Nasai Wanganeen Miller, I brought him in late for Connor Rosie, who was ruled out. 151, what a performance from him, so a great choice there. Max Holmes with the 121, you love to see that. Lockie Whitfield in his first game for the team with the 109. Nick Dacos, 162, was brilliant in that game against the Dockers. Tom Green with the 110. Max Scorn and Rowan Marshall both with 100 pluses. Matt Kennedy returned to form with the 104. Chad Warner as well with the 107. And Peatling with the 97. Love to see all of that. Now, there were a couple couple of lesser lights throughout the weekend. Tom Stewart with the injury only got 50. McKercher had a pretty poor performance against the Swans, if I'm being honest, and 74 wasn't great. Lowest score of the year for Bailey Smith with the 70. Jordan Dawson as my captain, not a good decision on my end. He only got 88, so that was 176. Chera with the 73, really disappointed with that. Rankin with the 66. Caleb Daniels 76. Got to really look to get rid of him in the next couple of weeks. But let's get to my brother's team over the weekend as well. So my brother's team had a pretty good week as well. He did score lower than me though. A couple of good players though that he did have. He had Jordan Clark with the 93, good performance from him. Midfield did disappoint a little bit, but he did have Brodie Grundy as his captain with the 129 to 258, so that's pretty decent, but overall not a very good week from him at all. If it wasn't for Nasai Wanganeen-Miller, his defense stood up pretty well, and the captaincy call would have had a pretty poor week. He also had Rory Laird in his midfield. I don't know what he's done to his team, dude. He's got so many midfield defenders and he's got 3 midfield defenders in his midfield. He's got Taj Houghton in his team. Bro, what's he done to his team? I don't know anyway, I guess I can't just sit here and rib on him for the whole episode. I mean, I could, but I'm not going to. Zach Butters, not a good performance from him with the 76. Jordan Dawson as well, pretty disappointing. He also had Brian Myers. That's probably one of his better performers, if I'm being honest. And Taj Houghton, I've really got to ask him why he's got him in his actual team, but that's a question for another day, I guess. So now let's get to our trades for the week. So my trades at this stage are going to be Johnson out for Lorenz and Stewart out for Lockie Ash. Now, this depends on if Tom Stewart is injured. I'll probably change that trade for Peatling out if Tom Stewart is still in the team, but at this stage I'm going with Lockie Ash. He seems like the consistent performer throughout the year. I actually looked at it, was a little bit surprised by this, but he scored over 100 plus in every single game after round 2, I believe. So in great form, has been very consistent throughout the year. So I'm going to go with Lockie Ash as the defender, and Johnson was played as a sub last week for Essendon, so I think it's about time to get rid of him. Will Lorenz looks like he's going to get some minutes for Port Adelaide going into the rest of the season, so he's the midfield reserve that I'm going to be picking up. There weren't really many other options on the reserves list at this stage of the year that could generate a little bit more cash towards the end of the season, so Lorenz is the guy I'm going to be going with at this moment in time. If my trade does change, it's probably going to be Peatling, maybe Adam Chera, that does slide out of the team, and I may even go for a Bontempelli type. I'm just waiting to see. Maybe Zach Butters, but after that performance last week, I'm probably a little bit hesitant to go with that one, especially going up against the Crows this week, so we just have to wait and see. But my brother's trades for this week are Johnson out for Max Heath, and he's got rid of Tom Stewart as well for Marcus Bontempelli. Now, he has told me that he will change this trade if Tom Stewart is in, so I'll have to wait and see on that front. But like I mentioned a moment ago, has a lot of midfield defenders in his midfield, so pretty easy straight swap there. Marcus Bontempelli in insane form this year since his return really from injury, and I think he's had one game where he got severely tagged against the Saints where he scored poorly, but other than that, he has been so consistent throughout the year, so don't mind that trade at all. Has 61k left, so we just have to wait and see if he can use those players to get rid of and get out, and then try and bring in some premium players towards the end of the season. I'm kind of looking towards that at this stage as well. I've got a couple of rookies that I can trade out to get some good cash in at this stage, which I'm really happy with. I've also got 138k left in the kitty, so I should be okay to get a couple of really good players in the next couple of weeks. But I think there's a couple of trades that I probably shouldn't have made throughout the mid-year, which has been a bit disappointing. I think probably at the end of the season, at the regular season with the fantasy all done, may even do like a review of the whole year for fantasy and see where I've gone wrong, where I went right. So maybe an idea, if you guys enjoyed that may like that idea, then make sure to let me know down below. But finally, of course, we have to take a look at the channel's ranked ladder, of course, and the Cheetah Cubs is still holding on to the top spot. Not much movement in the top 10 so far this week. Cheetah Cubs still sitting in first, the Welshman in second, third is Len Never Pretends, Delusional Fools in fourth, Nader's Nippers, that's a name I haven't seen, I don't think, this season at all. I haven't really been looking at that one. He's jumped all the way into fifth spot with 2,392, a brilliant performance from him. Jumps into the top 5, gives himself a bit of a chance. What's the top score? So the Cheetah Cubs leads at the moment by nearly 200 points on the Welshman, so he's got a very high score at the moment, so it's going to be tough to chase him down, but not too bad at the moment. Tex Wonkers in 6th, Knick Knack Paddywhack, love the name, in 7th, and Goonaville in 8th. I think it's my favourite name of the top 10 so far, but that's pretty much there. So let's look down the list where I'm ranked, and my brother's only just in front of me. He did jump into 40th spot after his performance over the week. Swans rules, not good enough from you, dude. You're a Swan supporter, you got to do better than that. Scored 1,937 this week. I don't know how that happened. He must have just had a couple of really bad performers there. He dropped all the way down, it looks like, after, 200 less points than a couple of us there, not the greatest. So how far am I away from my brother? It's nearly 100 points the difference. So not too much. I feel like I can catch that up. Seymour Bush, my favourite name in the 45th spot, was part of the league last year as well. Hasn't had as good a year this season, but 45th spot. He's starting to climb the ladder though. Had a pretty good week, had a better score than me. So, that's not exactly a massive achievement, but good on him for keeping up the fight. And at this stage, still trying to finish in the top 40. I think I can do that. The guy in 39th spot right now, Hung Nguyen, always hungry, don't mind the name. He is 140 points, 130 points in front of me. So not too far away. I think I can catch that up. But at this stage, in 43rd spot, not the worst. It's about mid-table. Would like to be a little bit higher than that. But I think my team's in a pretty decent spot going into the rest of the year. That's all I can really hope for at this stage. But guys, that's pretty much all we've got for the review for AFL Fantasy this week. Of course, make sure to let me know down below your trades going into next round, of course. And like I said, also let me know if you'd like a whole review of the whole season at the end of the year. And finally, guys, of course, we get to our fan favorite segment for the episode. It is going to be the Flog of the week for round 19 or episode 122, whatever way you want to look at it. And this week it is going to the umpire in the Collingwood v Fremantle game for the dissent call against Carl Warner of the Fremantle Dockers. So if you didn't see this, I'm sure you did. So there's no way anyone missed this if you're watching football or, been on the internet. If you've been camping over the weekend and you did not see this and you just got on your phone to watch your podcast or listen to it on Spotify, by the way, make sure to go follow. If this is the first time you've heard about this, of course, on the weekend, Fremantle playing Collingwood at the MCG. A free kick was called in the second term against Carl Warner on Lachie Schultz. He got him high, I think it was called. Free kick was awarded to Lachie Schultz. It was about 25 metres out, straight in front, and Carl Warner was pretty bemused by the decision. He turns, looks at the big screen at the MCG, and literally goes, "Oh, that's bullshit." And the umpire pays a dissent call. Now, you may think, "Oh, that's in the rule book. You're not allowed to point at the scoreboard." Hey, if that's the rule, why haven't you been paying it for, a year now? You pay these stupid rules about fucking dissent, which, by the way, I'm sorry, but if you're an AFL umpire and you can't handle "Oh, come on, bro, that's not a free kick," you should not have the job. I am sorry. That may be harsh. I don't really like people when they go, "Oh, fucking these woke snowflake fucking bullshit." No, this isn't this. You soft cunt. You're a soft bitch for the way you acted here. This is truly me umpiring. Okay, this is you wanting to be on the big screen at the MCG at 2:50 on a Sunday. This is all me fucking umpiring, bro. You need to pull your head in because Carl Warner literally did nothing. He went, "Oh, come on, that's bullshit." That's all he did. Wasn't even looking. And he turns and he pays 50-metre penalty. Now, I can't exactly see what the number is on the back of this umpire. However, whoever that was, you are the Flog of the week because that is the most blatant look of me umpiring, wanting to have your moment and wanting to make yourself look like a big man, trying to take it over these AFL players. That was so fucking soft. The most crap dissent call I've ever seen in my life. And there was actually one in the Sydney game against Errol Goulden, which I thought was probably there. I don't really like the dissent call. I don't think it should be really, unless you threaten the umpire, I don't really think there's much of a big deal. It's such a high emotional game. If the umpire's made the wrong decision, I understand, players are going to be frustrated. I don't really think it was a free kick, to be fair. It was a little bit high. I understand why it's happened. Lachie Schultz was on the ground. Carl Warner went in, a bit overzealous, and got him in the head. Clipped him in the head. So it's probably a free kick. But Carl Warner looks at the scoreboard, goes, "Oh, that's crap." And he's given 50. That's such a massive decision. That's such a massive penalty, for something that is so minuscule. You don't need to make your impact on the game. The best AFL umpired games are when you don't notice the umpiring. And that is crap. And that's the thing as well. Supporters aren't taking dissent rules seriously because, if you're an umpire or you're a watcher of an AFL game and an umpire calls a dissent call, most people, because you can't hear what the players are saying to the umpire during the game. So what we think is, he's just a soft cunt who has just had a fucking whinge because some player said, "Oh, that's not a free kick." So when an actual player has gone over the top, has gone something and called the umpire a name, or has told him to fuck off, or has sworn precariously like a lot, and is like actually really dissented at the umpire, most supporters now are just going to say, oh, no, he hasn't. Like, we don't have the evidence. We don't hear it. Because we see, this is the evidence we see for dissent now. A player points at the scoreboard and goes, oh, fuck, that's crap. And that's a 50-metre penalty in the AFL. Like, do we really want to have that in the game? Where a player is, like, just a little bit frustrated and he gets a penalty against him? And I feel sorry for Fremantle fans. Now, good on them. They won that game, and Collingwood fans are getting angry about the fucking umpiring in that game. It's like, bro, you got awarded a 50-metre penalty like that. And I think you won the free kick count as well, which isn't everything, I understand. But also, get over yourself. Like, fuck me. But Fremantle, this has happened to them before. This happened in Gather Round last year against Carlton, where a dissent call was made. When the umpire made the decision in the last minutes of the game, and it cost them the match. Well, it didn't cost them the match. It didn't. But, well, it could have. Because the game was 3 points at the time, and that awarded them a second goal, which got them to 9 points with about 50 seconds to go. And then Fremantle, they were 2 goals down. They couldn't really do much. But yeah, I feel sorry for Fremantle, to be honest. Everyone talks about the Crows. Well, Fremantle have had a couple of games taken away from them as well. So, guys, make sure to let me know down below who do you think's been robbed in more games, if it's Fremantle or the Adelaide Crows. That's pretty much all I've got for this episode of the podcast, guys. Of course, if you did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe over on YouTube. And if you are listening over on Spotify, make sure to leave us 5 stars and make sure to follow as well so you're notified on the podcast and the review that we release on Spotify as well every single week. But again, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll catch you all next week.